Good day, my name is Christelle from France the Klerk Independent Technical Analyst. The first one on our list to discuss today is Santam. And we can see that the share is reached a beautiful record high in the week of the 1st of July at 341 Rand 26. Ever since then, we saw lower highs on the upper shadows of the candles. Last week's candle was a clear spinning candle with a very small real body and long upper and lower shadows. And that tells us indecision after the preceding candle that was quite a bearish belt hold line candle, confirming that the sellers was keen to take profit. Now this candle in the making is not finished yet. It will only be so by Thursday's close because Friday is a public holiday. And then we can confirm that this is a teardrop candle or a negative type of candle. Should the long upper shadow continue on the top side of that real body. Very important, we are approaching that 40-week moving average represented by that red line. And that is the line in the sand. Below it, the long-term sentiment towards the share will change to negative. Once the share remain above it, it will continue to be positive. If I change this to a line graph, we can see that this red line, the 40-week, was a clear fighting line in the sand, where above it, we know that the long-term sentiment is positive. In other words, the buying power is there and that the buyers are the stronger party of the two. Once that level changes into a resistance again, we know that fear and the selling pressure might continue and even escalate a decline to the lower levels. My stochastic indicator is the one that I've added here, which is just one of many indicators that highlights overbought or oversold levels. At the moment, the stochastic is already on the mid zone around a 52. We always look at the blue line, the K percentage line. That is the shorter moving average of the two if you look at the formula. And because that's the shorter moving average, it will move faster than the orange line, the D percentage line. So at the moment, momentum to the bottom clearly in place. Your first sign of weakness was below the low of the week of the 8th of July when the share stopped making new lows. That low, that support level weighted at 322 Rand 58. So it's not too late depending on where you bought, but at the moment the graph is saying the sellers and other parties are taking profit, and you should consider maybe doing that as well. Only when the share starts to change these resistance levels, waiting at 335 Rand 12 or at 335.05. Once those levels starts to change into a support again, can we assume that the momentum to the top will continue. Beautiful upside rally that we have seen in Santam, but it looks like the sellers are taking profit at the moment. Quilter, another asset manager that was requested here. Beautiful rally to the top. Very important as well here. Since the beginning of Jan, the week of the 16th of Jan 2023 until about October 2023, the share kept on fighting that 40-week moving average, but it just could not attract enough buyers to lift it through that red line and continue upside. But in the week of the 30th of October, it managed to do that. In the following week, the 6th of November 2023, it changed that 40-week which was waiting at 19 Rand 52. It managed to change that into a support, and ever since then the share reached for higher levels. Yes, there were small pullbacks, and if it's much easier to see if we change this to a line graph. A little bit of profit taking did take place, but now after a beautiful rally since July of this year, the share has stopped making new highs. And very important, last week's candle is an example of a possible teardrop candle with a shooting star candle with a long tail at the top and a fairly small real body. The negativity about this candle will only be of this shooting star will only be confirmed when the next candle, this week's candle, is a bearish type of candle. All right. So that candle is obviously not finished yet, but very important. My stochastic is in overbought territory. It's sitting on an 86. But more importantly, that shorter moving average, the K percentage line, the blue one, has already broken downwards through the orange line. That means a negative divergence has been confirmed, which implies that the probability for more downside, the probability for profit taking is there. Only when Quilter starts to trade above last week's high, which is a level of 31 Rand 48, only above that level can I assume again that the momentum to the top can continue and they might drive it to higher levels. But as long as we are below, and remember, there are many support and resistance levels. You can either use the shadows or the real bodies or any neckline or trend line of a formation or any other horizontal trend line that you have drawn in the graph that has got more than 2 touching points. A 2 touching point trend line is seen as a temporarily trend line, and one that's got more than 2 touching points is seen as a strong one. The more touching points there are, the stronger the trend line, and in other words, the stronger that support or resistance is. So at the moment, last week's low, which weighted at 30 Rand 10, has changed into a resistance. So we can assume that the downside will continue as long as that level remains a resistance. Above it again, the next fight will be the high of last week's candle. Obviously, as I said, that resistance at 31.48. But the probability is there for more downside, a very overbought stochastic with a negative divergence. My 40-week moving average is waiting at 25 Rand 25, which is a little bit of a ways away from the current trading price, which tells me that the optimism and around the sentiment, long-term sentiment for the share is still very, very positive. All right. The next one on our list is CocaCola. Listed on the New York Stock Exchange, ticker KOF. And we can see, I want to change this to a line graph. It takes out the noise. And very important, we can see, okay, one, obviously downside. It came through the 40-week moving average. It changed that long-term sentiments to negative. It found support there in the week of the 1st of July. Bounced a little bit of upside and then retraced again. And that is seen as very negative. Why? Because it tells us there was not enough buyers to take this share price through the 40-week moving average. And 2 things happened here that I want to draw our attention to. One, there was a tweezer top where 2 consecutive candles found resistance at the same level, right? That implies downside. Very important, though that tweezer top tested the 40-week moving average, kept it at resistance and declined from there, which is seen as a negative technical goodbye case, which implies downside. Very important. So those are very negative at the moment for Coca-Cola, and only when that 40-week moving average or that tweezer top, that resistance level at $92.47, only when that level starts to change into a support again can we assume for more upside. Very important, we might be sitting here with a ugly inverse cup and handle formation. I'm going to draw that for you with a massive cup, tested the neckline and a handle. Now that neckline is waiting at, I'll give you that exact level now, $81.91. Below that level, the inverse cup and handle formation will be confirmed, which can take this share price a lot lower. The fact that that 40-week moving average was tested, could not change into a support and remains a resistance is seen as a very, very negative at the moment. So only when that level changes into support, we can see more upside. All right, very important. My stochastic was not even overbought, lost momentum and gave us a negative divergence at around between the 27.31 range. That is seen as very, very negative at the moment. So very all warning formations on Coca-Cola, depending on where you buy it. You want to maybe consider taking some profit here, wait for the formation to play out, or for the share to stop making new lows, and then when that stochastic is oversold and starts to turn around, you can consider maybe an accumulation opportunity again. Bitcoin. Ticker a BTC, depending on where you trade it, very important. I want to quickly change this to a line graph. Again, I want to take out the noise because I want to highlight here a ugly possible double top formation. And that double top will only be confirmed when that neckline changes and remains a resistance. And on a line graph, that is waiting at, in dollar terms, $56,685. $56,685. All right. Only when the top of that double top changes into a support again, waiting around 68,775. Only when that level starts to change into a support again will the warning of the double top be off the table. Very important. That support of the neckline of the double top is waiting almost at the 40-week moving average, waiting at 56,314. That is a critical floor. That is a critical support that has to remain in place if we think that Bitcoin can continue to rally for upside. If that level changes into a resistance and starts to, remain a resistance, ladies and gentlemen, that can be the top for now, because double top, triple tops, and head and shoulder formations are all warning formations to highlight that the rally is coming to an end and that the top of the instrument is established and that we can see downside from there. All right, I want to maybe just have a look here. Okay, my 20-week moving average represented by the green line has also changed into a resistance. However, I do not have a death cross formation yet. That will only take place when those two lines cross one another to the downside. All right, but a very important phenomenon or formation to keep an eye on is when that 40 and 20-week moving averages cross either from the downside to the upside, which we refer to as a golden cross formation, or from the upside to the downside when we refer to it as a death cross formation. Important levels to highlight. All right, so if I go back and I change this to a candle graph, we can see that there is a window on the Bitcoin graph, a gap, right? And that is waiting between 62,470 and $59,445. Now, a gap acts as a level of, in this case, a resistance. So as we assume that the momentum to the bottom will remain in place as long as that gap remains open, or the gap can act as a magnet, pulling the buyers up to go and close that gap or window. And what do we mean by closing a gap? In other words, it needs to trade within that interval, within that price interval. So if there is enough buyers in the Bitcoin share price, it needs to take it back all the way back to that low of 62,470, trade there. And if there is enough buyers, then obviously higher. But if the seller starts to, become more powerful, then downside again. So this gap is a very important resistance at the moment. So not only the gap, the neckline of the possible double top and the 40-week moving averages are very close to one another. So if if all those levels remain a resistance, we can obviously see more downside. I'm just trying to see if there are any massive windows at the bottom here that can act as a target for downside, but I don't see any. I do see a gap there that was in the week between the 6th of June 2022 and the 13th of June 2022, went all the way down, but guess what? It came back. The Bitcoin came back, closed that gap, pulled back again. Anyway, the point of my story is here that windows always get closed, but it can take even decades. So don't think it has to happen within the next couple of weeks. So as long as that resistance is there, downside. My stochastic has turned around, confirming downside with a negative divergence without being overbought. So those are all negative indications. My first sign of positive, of optimism, will be when that low starts to change into a support, as I've said, as well as the high there of 70,825, which is the level of the week of the 29th of July. When those levels start to change into a support, I think there will be a sigh of a relief that the buyers are being pulled in again, and that they are keen to take this share price higher. If you've got any requests to do via our Talking Technical show, please feel free to send us an email at admin@fransdeklerk.com or send a Twitter request at Trader France. Have a lovely week. Take care.